Enduring Legacy's just always been one of those guns to the community. It's got a rich history of being everyone's go-to for big targets and sustained DPS, but it did fall off a little bit after the inclusion of weapon cores made everything else stronger around it. Why run a slow LMG when a pistol can do the same job, if not better? Well, fortunately though, the Legacy is back and stronger than ever, with a buff to its now intrinsic elemental damage on every shot, and a solid weak point multiplier of 1.85x, we're now hitting much harder than we ever did before. So in today's video we'll be breaking down my go-to setup for the Enduring Legacy LMG, we'll be talking all things to do with modules to get the most out of it, weapon cores to farm for, and then lastly which Descendants can really benefit from its power. Of course, as always, if that all sounds good to you, then what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. So just in case you've been living under a rock for the past year, the Enduring Legacy was the main weapon of most Colossus takedowns back in the day, before weapon cores boasting a large magazine, very solid firearm attack, and an ability to boost its own damage when hitting a burning enemy at the cost of a lower fire rate. Well, the real saving grace for the gun was how strong it could critically hit for when it was built. With a 2.3x multiplier as standard, the gun could skyrocket its DPS if you ran it on a Descendant that could boost its 20% crit rate base. Now with the latest hotfix granting it fire attack as standard of 6,578 points of damage per shot, the gun can now trigger its own firearm attack boosting unique effect by itself without the need for a module to be slotted in. But the elemental attack being a huge boost for the gun's DPS also doubles up with its other unique effect being that of quenching, so for every single shot that's landed by the Legacy on a target, a staggered quenching will be applied, reducing the target's fire resistance to a total of 45% at 50 stacks. So not only are you building the fire elemental damage per shot, but in combination with defense neutralization from mutant cells, we'll have another 30% taken off, and enhanced focus rounds in the inversion reinforcement will also be dropping that by 20%, meaning that you can strip off up to 95% of an enemy's fire resist should the math stack like that in-game from different sources. With defense neutralization also shaving off 50% of a target's defense for that initial shot, as well as all the fire resistance shred going on boosting up the fire attack's damage, now is the time for the Legacy to make its own comeback. So that means with today's build we'll be focusing on upping that fire attack, perfect for all the shred that's going on, along with taking advantage of those juicy crit and weak point multipliers that the gun now possesses. Helping its fire rate would also be quite nice too, but ultimately we are limited with the types of cores that the gun does have access to, so we'll do what we can do from there. But now we're on to the bit that you're all here for, which is going to be the modules that we'll be rocking, helping to push that DPS and bring the weapon back to the meta discussion table. Kicking things off, we'll want to boost up the base attacks of the gun, both the default and fire version, so that we can really see the benefit from the modifiers to come. Due to the lack of space though, we can only run really one of each, so for this we'll be grabbing action reaction for the firearm boost, and fire enhancement for the fire attack. With both slotted in, we can now look at the rest of the damage modifiers to bring all the DPS together. So for our weak point modifier, we'll be wanting have aiming, giving us the biggest weak point increase for a single slot. Due to our current cores in the build, which we're going to be talking a little bit later, the accuracy downside won't be hurting us here, and will allow us to be able to still maintain 100% accuracy inside the build. For our quality of life picks, we'll be grabbing fire rate up as well as expand weapon charge, increasing our fire rate and boosting our mag size between reloads respectively. Now due to the choice of yellow mod that we will be going for on the gun, which we'll talk about next, the increased fire rate helps to compensate for its downside, but also allows us to benefit more from its ramped up when it gets to max stacks. Similarly, the expand weapon charge allows us to be able to fire for much longer at max stacks, allowing us to benefit from not just that increased fire rate, but also the increased damage for more of those bullets at the end. Of course, the yellow mod that allows us to be able to do all of this is going to be Sharp Precision Shot, giving us increased fire rate of firearm attack and lesser recoil the longer the trigger is held, resulting in a net effect of plus 20% to our fire rate and 60% to our firearm attack, which thanks to fire enhancement will then transfer into even more fire attack as well. The synergies that we can get going in this gun are just kind of unreal once you start thinking about them. But the best is absolutely safe for last, with the crit package taking up the remaining 4 slots. 2 for crit rate for consistency and 2 for crit damage, taking advantage of those insane multipliers that the gun already has. Starting with the crit rates, we're going to use both better insight as well as edging shot to total up to an increase of 82% against our base rate. Of course, with crit based gun Descendants, that base figure rarely stays at 20%, meaning that with these slot-ins we can get upwards of 90–100% easily. Tied in with the crit rate mods though, we also have the 2 damage mods, throwing in better concentration and concentration priority. The combination of the two gives us 194.8% ready to be thrown into that 2.3x crit multiplier, which totals a crazy 4.48x crit damage mult on top of the 2.3x that we were already doing. It's pretty much a no-brainer to run these mods when you think about it, especially if we can land those tasty weak points at the same time as critting. So this is the overall module build, which in combination with the substats and cores will see us go over 10x on that crit damage and just shy of a 3x weak point multiplier, as well as a whopping 171 rounds to be able to put down range. So now we're on to the substats, and this one's quite an easy one for us to be able to cover. The gun doesn't need multi-hit due to its low output multiplier, but its weak point and crit damage is high, meaning that we're best off rolling into those. With rolls of fire attack, crit rate, crit damage, and weak point damage, your legacy is about to hit as hard as it's ever going to, and bring with it some of the better multipliers that you can do from the readjustments. Now bringing it on over to the core side of things, the Legacy doesn't have too great of a selection in terms of colours on its core slots, and I'm really hoping that Nexon addresses this sometime soon, as with just one core colour change, the Legacy could actually make its way near or maybe even back on top. For our core slots though, we do have one free, one red, 2 yellow and 1 purple, so as standard, as we aren't going for a bonus firearm attack roll on the substats, the purple can be completely ignored here, so feel free to be able to roll whatever you'd like. For our 2 yellows though, while yes, sprint speed and grapple charge would be generically useful, the Legacy is a stand and shoot type of gun, so it's one of the better weapons to roll things to help with accuracy and recoil. Now, if you want the ideal rolls to help you with holding down that trigger until nothing moves, then one roll into aimed accuracy will make the Legacy near pinpoint for the start of its firing spread, and a recoil call will help minimise the reticle spread as much as possible, allowing us to be able to actually hit those weak points with ease. Combined with the highest stacks of sharp precision shot, and you'll have minimum recoil, making aiming on the target the best the gun's ever felt. As for our red slot, it has to be a crit damage roll. The idea that we can roll over 100% into this damage slot, and it then gets fed into that 2.3x multiplier for up to a 230% crit damage boost is downright disgusting, and pushes this gun over that 10x crit damage threshold like we mentioned earlier. Unlike weak point mults, we have yet to see or hit the crit damage cap, so feel free to go as high as you can here for that max DPS. Now as for our free slot, there's so many things that could be ideal in here for quality of life, like fire rate or even more crit damage, but in the end there really only was one choice. A fire attack core here ups our intrinsic and added fire attacks, perfect for being thrown into all those multipliers that we've built up as hard as possible. This is especially true after we shred the target's fire resistance as much as possible, meaning that the longer we shoot, the more damage we'll apply, gaining more base attack as SPS stacks up, which then transfers 30% of that brand new figure into the base fire attack, added into the cores along with the focus rounds. It's just an overall fantastic core that just does so much more for the gun, especially when it comes to the DPS calcs. Now as for Descendants, you're probably going to get sick of me in this section of the video going, oh, it's a gun, it's best on gun Descendants like Haley and Enzo, and yes, that pretty much is still true here. Having that added crit rate really does elevate this gun to becoming much more consistent. Think, would you rather have the base version of this gun or the one that crits every shot for 10 times the damage? Yeah, it's pretty much a no-brainer, right? Of course, due to the sharp precision shot, a max duration Glade can dish out that pain too, really benefiting from the increased rate of fire, but personally I think she has better options to be able to use in that slot than this. But no one, and I do mean no one, comes close to being best in slot other than Backdraft Blair. Having the ability to apply easy defense neutralization, boost up the weapon's crit rate and damage, along with more weak point multiplier, and even apply burn so that the Legacy has the higher firearm damage from its own unique effect is insane synergy to have, and really makes quick work of all enemies on screen. Now admittedly the gun does hurt as it misses out on crowd control properties that other weapons like Thunder Cage or Albion Cavalry kind of possess, but if you have one target that pretty much needs to go down and pretty quickly, then the Legacy has got Blair's back. And with all out of the way, that wraps it up on the video for my current Enduring Legacy build, the LMG slowly finding its way back to being useful once again. Now while the content has been geared more towards being mobbing centric and less about one boss taking an age to dispose of, with the drop of Axion Fields bringing in much stronger enemies, I wouldn't be surprised to see Enduring Legacy getting a callback by a few players. But this is a section I want to hear from you. How are you finding the weapons after the buff patch? Have you tried Enduring Legacy since the hotfix? And lastly, who will you be running this on? Let me know all that and more down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.